Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're checking out my version of this 4-color control deck, which has been doing the rounds in standard, and it's essentially a Jeskai control deck, splashing black, mainly for inevitable defeat, a 4-mana instant, cannot be countered, exiles a non-land permanent, and it's also kind of a lightning helix as our opponent loses 3 and we gain 3 life. And we can also use the black mana to maybe flash back Mystical Teachings, a 4-mana instant that lets us tutor up whatever instant or card with flash we have and put it into our hand, and then for 6 mana we can do it a second time. So those are the main incentives to splash a little bit of black, and then otherwise we've got access to the typical Jeskai control tools in the form of some instants at 2 mana, No More Lies as a cheap counter spell, there's Lightning Helix to deal 3 and gain 3, and then Get Lost to deal with creatures, planeswalkers, and enchantments. And then Consult the Star Charts from Edge of Eternities has been an amazing addition for any blue control deck, especially one that can often pass a turn with a bunch of mana up, playing the draw-go control style as it's known, as we can maybe kick this for 4 mana total, and then go digging for additional resources, and the longer the game goes and the more lands we have in play, the more powerful it becomes. And then at 3 mana we've got a bit more card draw and sorcery speed this time with Stock Up, looking at the top 5. We've got 3 Steps Ahead, which we're often casting as a 3 mana counter spell, but it has some additional modes as well. And then Fire Magic can be a versatile sweeper that we can cheaply cast to just deal 1 damage to each creature, especially good against the white life gain decks that have a lot of 1 toughness creatures they can deploy early, and this can give us a way to catch back up, but as the game progresses we can also spend more mana to deal more damage. And then at 4 mana we've already mentioned Mystical Teachings, Inevitable Defeat, and the kicked Consult the Star Charts, which is essentially a 4 mana play. And then topping off our curve we've got a few more sweepers, 2 copies of Ultima at sorcery speed, so we cannot find this one with Mystical Teachings, but in addition to destroying all creatures it also destroys all artifacts, so this can be very effective against the various synthesizer artifact decks, but it can also blow up a Cauldron out of the VV Cauldron decks. And then we have one Final Showdown as an instant speed sweeper that we can find with our Mystical Teachings, so against creature decks this might be the best instant to find. And then our Curve Topper and our main win condition are the 3 copies of a Jeskai Revelation, which can do a lot of things. It can bounce a permanent or a spell that's on the stack. We can deal 4 damage to any target, make a pair of Prowess Monk tokens, we get to draw 2 cards, and we get to gain 4 life. So making those Monk tokens can give us a win condition, in addition to all the burn spells, as Jeskai Revelation can deal 4, we've got our Inevitable Defeat draining for 3, and Lightning Helix, so that's how we can very quickly turn the corner and start burning the opponent out. And then the mana base is of course going to be a little bit sketchy as we're trying to support 4 colors and we don't have any amazing tri-lands to really go with it, but we do have Starting Town, which is not ideal for a control deck as we much prefer our lands entering untapped late in the game and not costing us any life. This goes against that, but of course it does provide some good mana fixing early. And then we've got a mix of shock lands like Sacred Foundry, Watery Grave, which are also good at enabling the Verge lands, the Riverpower Verge, and the Flood Farm Verge, which can be enabled with any of our shock lands, as well as with the Meticulous Archive entering tapped but letting us surveil 1. And then we've got a few basics in case we need to search them up, as well as a Mysterize Village, which can also make our spells uncounterable, which is pretty important in control matchups, being able to make our finishers uncounterable. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. This hand sadly is a little slow, so I'm gonna have to mulligan. This is more reasonable. Still missing black, so could get rid of the Inevitable Defeat, or we can get rid of Revelation, which we're pretty far from casting. And then turn 2 at least we'll have our interaction available. Opponent with a Pylon, so could be more of a ramp deck or Reanimator. So then I mostly want to keep the No More Lies for the reanimation spells. Fear of missing out, I'll allow. You can just Helix it. Discards a Bitter Triumph. So we want to find more counter spells, some of our card draw effects. Valgavoth's Faithful threatens to reanimate nothing. I guess a fear of missing out next turn. So it's not that scary. Now Tersa does hit for 3. Can improve their hand, maybe hit some land drops. And if they discard something scary, now the Faithful's also threatening. So I think I still need to counter that one. So maybe they're just missing their 4th land. I could really use some card draw. Another Fear with Delirium enabled. We'll see what they discard. Arden, so now the Faithful is the priority. Or I can just let them reanimate Arden and remove it before it triggers. Probably makes more sense, because I could have another Zombify in hand. So then I may as well make them spend the mana. Alright, Consult is what we needed, so can kick that and still get lost. Their opponent goes for Arden, does not have any built-in protection, so I can destroy it before it gets a chance to trigger. And then the Fear can attack us twice. Alright, let's try and find some goodies. Do need to find another answer for a reanimation spell on Arden, because that can take over. Alright, so starting town to make black does enter tapped. No More Lies. I guess for now can maybe keep me alive. And then Mystical Teachings is also tempting. Or I can just go starting town, No More Lies, play it tapped, be able to defeat on the following turn. That feels pretty weak. It's definitely No More Lies. And then I think Teachings makes sense. Alright, so the Surveil is going to be wasted if we search. So I could Teachings first. And then just have No More Lies up. And then we can cast a Revelation. And black mana's fine. Okay. And yeah, that's definitely worth countering. Would reanimate Arden, and then their Legends dying would deal additional damage. Fear draws another land, so only hits for 4. Now they know about Jeskai Revelation, they don't know about Inevitable Defeat. But yeah, either way, pass a turn with mana up. And Carnosaur we can send packing. So return a spell, deal 4. And unlike Cascades, Discover doesn't trigger when cast, it's when it enters with the Carnosaur. Whereas if they had a Cascade spell, of course those aren't in Standard anymore. But that triggers regardless of a counter spell. Alright, so now we picked up Final Showdown, so we can wipe the board at instant speed. Can also Teachings get 3 steps ahead as a hard counter, which I don't hate. Keep up double blue. Trigger Prowess so we can start dealing some damage. And this way I don't need to immediately wipe the board. Now if Carnosaur happens, we might want to let it resolve. Hope it doesn't discover into a reanimation spell. Otherwise I can still counter it and then defeat answers a Carnosaur. Opponent does have the Zombify. So yeah, that's going to force the issue, because Arden can chain together double fear of missing out to basically win the game. So if they have another Zombify, I guess we lose. Alright, it's going to be the Vestige instead. Just warped. But that can now put Carnosaur into play. And that discovers into another fear of missing out. Alright, so we've got our work cut out for us. So with Final Showdown, I can make my creatures indestructible. So that's probably what we're setting up. So that's 6, 7 mana. So that's not too difficult. And then I guess we'll play a tapped starting town. No attacks. Maybe let them overextend. Tersa is fine. Discarding a bunch of removal spells. Opponent's gonna go to attackers with Fear and Carnosaur. That's a lot of damage, so I'm probably forced to Showdown here already. So we'll see what Tersa finds with the ability. Hits another Fear. I was hoping they would maybe exile Arden, or I guess a removal spell that they felt inclined to cast. So I guess I can go to blockers, but probably gonna have to Showdown, otherwise we're pretty dead. I mean, I could take 14, I suppose. 7 and then another 7, let them cast another Fear, and then Final Showdown, but then I'm also losing my monks. I don't think that's worth it. Now I can only choose one creature to make indestructible. And they have another Vestige they can warp. I need another card draw effect. Alright, stock up is exactly what I'm looking for. And then let's just stamp this village, because I don't need to make my spells uncounterable. Opponent seems to have a torch a tower. Alright, so they're down to 1 card in hand, but still 2 Vestiges in exile. Definitely want to consult, and we'll grab the Teachings as well. Second Teachings for a counterspell if needed. Otherwise, we can just consult with Kicker. And then Teachings wants to string together more Jeskai Revelations. Alright, Faithful is a problem, since that gets back Arden, but Arden we can also defeat before it gets a chance to do anything. If our opponent goes for Carnosaur instead, I guess that's fine. And then being able to exile Arden for good is also where we want to be. Now I won't be able to defeat and play Kicked Consult. Might have been worth it to play the land untapped for it. And the opponent does go for Carnosaur instead. So if that now hits a reanimation spell, which they did, they get to keep a leftover Carnosaur pretty much. Because they are still going for Arden here, I imagine. So make sure to exile that before it triggers. And then I don't think there's any copies left in the graveyard at the moment. Other opponents could maybe hardcast one if they have it in hand. They still have a Restless Vents, which I guess I didn't see. So that can get in for 2. And also look an awful lot like a Blazemire Verge alternate art. And they had a Torture Tower to discard. Gonna wait to kick Consult. Opponent's at 13. So if I kick Consult, I can still Jeskai Revelation if I draw into it, or I can Teachings for it, so I'm guaranteed to have it in hand. So then I guess I'll just pass. Opponent goes to attackers. I'm fine to take 7. And Overlord, we can bounce with a Revelation. For damage to my opponents, so we're not too far from burning them out. Especially now with double Helix. Opponent's going to impend the Overlord. Can maybe get back a Fear of Missing Out. But I'm pretty sure we have them. Goes for Faithful instead. Also makes sense. So if their last unknown card is not a removal spell, with Prowess we should easily have 9 damage. Yeah, opponent's going to keep a mana, so maybe they do have a removal spell. Either way, going for stock up seems reasonable, and then I can still double Helix and defeat. Find probably just lands and doesn't matter, 3 steps I guess. Go to attackers, and then can just Helix face. With 3 steps as backup. So yeah, once this deck decides to close out the game with the Revelation, it can do so pretty quickly. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a keepable hand. Got all our colors. Good mix of interaction and card draw. Opponent on what looks to be the Pixie deck. And starting town, I guess I'll keep. We just want to keep hitting our land drops. Can maybe play turn 3. For now, Relic draws a card, trigger the Otter. So if I can counter their bounce effects, that's probably the best place to be. But we also have the flexibility of Helix. Probably want a way to kick the Consult. Fear of Isolation has to pick up talent as an additional cost. So yeah, that happens. Don't care to counter it. Opponent replays a talent. Now that I could counter, do we want to? Could just Helix the Fear of Isolation, I suppose. Yeah, they don't have a ton of powerful instants and sorceries to return with level 2. It's mostly removal spells, maybe stock up that they might also have. So I think I just keep my No More Lies for the Cosmogrand Zenith, which survives Helix at 4 toughness. Or a Pixie that we can counter and then they can't pick anything up. So yeah, let's go starting town so that I can play Kicked Consult next turn. Can take a bit of damage of the Otters. The Pixie deck also has fewer non-creature spells than it used to, so the Otters are a little bit less scary, as you're not going to see Prowess triggered as much. Spyglass is acceptable. Also, if they do cast a stock up and I No More Lies counter it, it gets exiled, so then they can't get it back with a talent either. Opponent's going to pass with mana up. Possible they have like a Drowner they can flash in. I think I still wait on Consult, since we seem to have time to set that up. Opponent does nothing. Our opponent's also not going to be running too many creature lanes, which can otherwise be a problem for our style of control deck. So the blue-black kind of mid-range decks are a bit more problematic for us. And there we see stock up, so absolutely want to counter and exile that one. I'm surprised I didn't main phase it to trigger prowess. Okay, do we consult for 2 mana? Maybe I should, because we are starting to take a bit of damage. Alright, and then could grab a 3 steps. We have lands aplenty. And then I'm leaning tapped lands, either 3 steps or consult with kicker. If I play an untapped land, I can both 3 steps and helix, or 3 steps with the extra spree mode. But 2 damage is pretty relevant here. So I'm still leaning tap lands, pass. And then if we miss out on the draw to discard, it's not a disaster. So I'll happily take 3. Hope they don't cast anything meaningful so we can consult. So that turn worked out. I would like 1 more land for Jeskai Revelation. And then I guess Mystical Teachings isn't bad. In case we run out of card draw effects. And No More Lies is also losing effectiveness. So this turn, go for a tap land. And then next turn we can Revelation to try and stabilize. So I can helix plus 3 steps. Momentum Breaker would make me discard a card. Also triggers prowess. Could discard the Teachings, since we can always flash it back later. Teachings could also get my sweeper, so there are some options here. I think I'm leaning just helix and Otter token now. And then discard the Teachings. Should have done this before the prowess resolved. Opponent has the Kirin, so that can essentially fizzle the life gain. Which, yeah, I mean, I could 3 steps to counter, and then we also don't need to deal with a 2-1 flyer. Might be a little drastic. But we have enough tools in hand that we can now handle a Cosmogrind Zenith if that shows up. Opponent goes exploring. And Kaito, that one's a little bit more dangerous. Can return spell or permanent. But doesn't help against ninjutsu. So then I do kind of need to deal with all their individual threats. Should I main phase this? I guess I could. Inevitable defeat and Get Lost can still answer Kaito after everything's said and done. So sure. Answer Siren, and then bounce the Otter. I guess that also works. Just deal with both creatures. So they can ninjutsu, find another Revelation. So now we're on the gravy train, pretty much. Opponent's gonna level up the talent, nothing to get back. So that's a pretty sad state of affairs. We get to untap with all our mana. And we can start applying pressure. Could flash back Mystical Teachings. Could... Don't really want to bounce anything with Revelation. I guess we can bounce their land. So that's fine. Any specific land, probably Shock Land or a Surveil Land, which is always tapped. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. Our hand is missing an actual basic land type for the various verges. On the draw, this is not perfect, since we're missing some cheaper interaction, but we do have Ultima to eventually catch back up. So we'll maybe give it a try. Still have blue mana from Starting Town. Turn 1 elves off a green-white land, drew no more lies. So let's go starting town. Next turn maybe Verge enables no more lies. And then we can stock up. So it is a ramp deck. Can counter their 5-drop. Another elves I cannot counter. Alright, so they could ramp out some 7-mana cards next turn if I tap out for stock up. So I could just be patient, keep up no more lies. Although finding a land with stock up to enable the Verges would be nice. So it's a close call. I guess I'll be patient for another turn. Alright, that's a perfect one to counter and exile. So that worked out. And then now I could keep up inevitable defeats, or I can just stock up and be tapped out. I mean, if they play another Tyrant, I can exile it retroactively. So it might be a fine stock up turn, and then just play tap land here. How about double defeat? It's a little clunky. Could go for one Get Lost or a Showdown, although we already have Ultima. Yeah, just go double defeat. Verge lands are online. Alright, it is a random encounter deck. I was sort of suspecting it, but didn't see the red mana. So opponents missed, although they did mill a couple more encounters. Although now might be a fine time to just wipe the board with Ultima, so they don't have the mana to flashback random encounter. That seems reasonable. And then hopefully next turn I can start keeping up defeat for any haste creatures. Opponent passes. Fire Magic would have been a cleaner solution to the Llanowar Elves. And then already have land 7 for Revelation, so don't need to prioritize it. I guess land 8 would be double defeat, although we're pretty likely to draw into one. So lands, maybe flashback encounter. No, opponent plays their land tapped and goes for the Overlord, so I'm happy to defeat that one. So now I can also use Revelation to quote-unquote counter the random encounter. So that's a good tempo play as we waste all their mana. Return that, deal 4 to you. And it does put the spell in exile, since they flashed it back. That's how that works. So how close are we to just winning the game? I guess I can Helix them, and then cast Fire Magic just to trigger Prowess. And that should do it. Alright, so we were lucky to dodge the first random encounter, and then we were able to take over. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Start with Archive, and then Revelation. That's a tough one. Eventually I'll want it, but right now the priority is hitting my land drops, so I'm gonna have to decline. Opponent on the red aggro, so definitely want some cheap removal. Lightning Helix is one of our best cards. For now we'll see if we want to Get Lost to Hard Claw or something else. Another Hard Claw, so definitely take out the first one now. Opponent can go exploring. Finds a shock, keeps it on top, and we drew a Lightning Helix. So I'm not opposed to just going main phase Helix. Otherwise our opponent can maybe burn us and pump Hard Claw in response. Our opponent just passes, that's perfect. So I don't think it's worth it to shock myself with Sacred Foundry, although it would let me kick Consult, and maybe we're far enough ahead where I can afford it. Yeah, you know what? They clearly didn't have a Screaming Nemesis last turn, so I don't foresee needing to get lost. Or 3 steps ahead for that matter. So then it's a good opportunity to go digging for extra lands and more life gain. Inevitable defeats, and then can go for tapped Archive. Sure. So it feels like we're already in control of this game. Stock up, I don't mind keeping. We did bin a Revelation, so there's only 2 left in the deck. So maybe our opponent starts playing the control role and tries to burn all our Monk tokens. That might make things a bit more difficult. Yeah, I don't mind using the defeat here. They might actually want to burn their own creature to deny the 3 life, but then they're also wasting a burn spell. Okay, so now I can stock up and leave double blue up for 3 steps. And the longer we wait on Consult, the better. And then don't think I need Ultima. So could just go 2 lands or land get lost. You know what, let's go double land. Then I don't need to ever pick a land with Consults. Can also maybe draw a discard with 3 steps at some point. There's a Screaming Nemesis. That one's a fine one to counter, or I can get lost. Although, problem with letting it resolve is their opponent can shock it before they get lost, and then I can gain life for the rest of the game. So countering is definitely the cleaner solution, and our opponent scoops it up. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. Double Verge is probably not gonna cut it here. So we'll mulligan. This is a bit more manageable. Now the age-old question, what to put on the bottom. Ultima could be amazing for all we know, for up against a Synthesizer deck. We have 2 cheaper removal spells, so I could see one of them not being necessary. And then looking at our sequencing, if we want to go tapped Watery Grave on 1, I wouldn't be able to Helix on 2. So maybe that goes. Put on blue-red. Now we can go tap Sacred Foundry. Then I won't have to deal 1 with Starting Town if we want to get lost. So blue-reds looks like the VV Cauldron deck. So then we have a couple answers to the namesake Cauldron, although VV's already in the graveyard. So I'm gonna keep up Get Lost. Which can also answer with Prophet's Eidetic Memory, which is low-key another important enabler for their fair game plan. Tersa, I sadly cannot counter. Yeah, we'll let that resolve, and then we'll see, based on what they discard, if Fear is a bigger threat than Light Shatter. So they do not quite have Delirium, Creature, Enchantment, Instant. But I could see the Fear dealing more damage in the long term once our opponent casts a sorcery or discards a land. So I think for now I still get lost to Fear. Also with map tokens, if they explore something into the graveyard, they can get Delirium. Now I probably have to keep up 3 steps. I'm gonna have to deal myself a decent amount of damage with these shock lands and starting towns. Hopefully they don't sacrifice the maps and then at some point I can destroy them. And there's a memory, which they kept on top. So they could explore again, hit me for 5. Just gonna be an attack for 4. And then a Mako. I think I have to counter, because, I mean, do I? We do have Ultima to clean up, but that's still gonna take me 2 turns to set up. Memory, I can maybe 3 steps. Just play tapped Watery Grave, and then Ultima, so then I maybe don't have to counter the Mako. And they go exploring on the Mako now. Alright, not gonna draw this card. Verge is potentially useful. Although I'm still leaning tapped Watery Grave for now. Don't foresee needing to inevitable defeat. But I'm happy to counter the Eidetic Memory. Still gonna cost me 2 life. So we are playing catch-up. But I'm hoping they take this opportunity to resolve Cauldron, although I guess they do have Vivi in the graveyard, so they will have access to a ton of mana, which could kill me, but if it doesn't, then Ultima can clean up pretty nicely. So were they sandbagging a Cauldron? They were. Alright, 2 cards left in hand. We'll see what damage they can do here. One's a land. So if the last card's not a card draw spell, we might be okay. Opponent exiles a Mako instead of Vivi, so they're maybe aware of Ultima, and don't want to exile Vivi just yet. So everything's gone. Opponent untaps, we're at 4, so doesn't take much to cross the finish line. Tersa plus Eidetic Memory would do it. We get to untap, that's a huge victory here. So now we've got our inevitable defeat available, and we're getting close to Jeskai Revelation. Now Lightning Helix. Alright, just waiting for them to present the threats we can remove. Not afraid of any burn spells, really. No More Lies, good to play on their flashback cards. Or harmonized cards, I should say. Okay, opponent does have the 3 mana to pay for it, so we won't be able to counter with No More Lies. So that resolves. Discarding a bunch of lands, they were probably flooding a bit. And then now Vivi. I think I would just rather exile with the defeats, or I can Helix it. Yeah, I guess Helix is a clean answer. I would rather keep defeat to answer another Cauldron, since they still have a Vivi in the graveyard. They do have a land, so they could still have a 1 mana spell to grow Vivi, and then it would survive Lightning Helix. So then I should maybe get lost it, and keep the defeat for Cauldron. That works. Consult is excellent. I don't think I can afford to main phase kick it, but maybe end of turn. Yeah, once I gain 3 more life, I'll feel a bit safer. Fear of missing out resolves. Discard a Braid, that's fine. So they can still harmonize Winter Night Stories if they'd like. Opponent goes exploring instead, so this is a good window for Lightning Helix. And then I can still consult with Kicker, Vivi, That's fine. Could also counter with No More Lies. But Consult would be more efficient, and then I'm likely to find an answer. So I should maybe Consult now in case I have a Spell Pierce. Alright, and then Helix plus a land for Jeskai Revelation, so even if VV grows, I can still remove it. Could also go Stock Up plus Verge, since we have a bunch of removal in hand already. So I might want additional card draw. But yeah, I think we've turned the corner here. VV finds a land. And I'm just gonna main phase Revelation. Or do I? Yeah, it's probably safer, so bounce Starting Town. And then take out VV. So even if they have Cauldron, they don't have a creature in play to abuse it, and then next turn we can still remove it. So harmonize Winter Night Stories. Now I don't expect my Monk tokens to necessarily survive, but that's also why I picked Stock Up over Lightning Helix, so we would have more fuel. Opponent passes. Alright, step 1, I can Stock Up. See if they have a response. And we're looking for 3 steps is good, Consult is good, Teachings is good, so a lot of great options. At this point, Consult is probably the best one. And then 3 steps complements it nicely. So can just hit for 4. Teachings is good value to have it in the graveyard. Want to hit additional land drops. And then we get to pass with a grip full of interaction. Our opponent is gonna bounce a token, that's fine. And maybe another one. So our opponent is still at 20. There's seems like a good one to counter, otherwise they get value out of both the discard and potentially the attack. Could of course also defeat before the attacks, but if their hand is bad, I think I would rather just counter here. Opponent does have Cauldron to go with VV, but without creatures, we don't care. I guess they could have exiled the Teachings before I got to flash it back. So could go for it now. And then I'll still have No More Lies and Helix up. So that's probably fine. Yeah, maybe they should have activated Cauldron when they had the chance. So we'll grab a Revelation. And then I don't think I'll need Fire Magic, although it is a cheap answer to the Mako. I guess No More Lies has also lost its luster. Stock Up is gone. Yeah, No More Lies can maybe go. If we just keep answers for creatures, Cauldron's not a threat. Scholar will resolve. Discards Torch. And Winter Night Stories now as well. That one's better to exile with No More Lies. So they can Cauldron with VV, make a bunch of mana, but they only have 1 card left. And now defeat on Cauldron looks a bit better too, or we can bounce it with Revelation. So opponent has 4 mana, and they do have an Engineer left over. Actually kind of scary. So Engineer can now also make mana with VV's ability. Make a dragon. Opponent's hitting for 3. And yeah, their board got kind of scary out of nowhere, so it still shows the danger of VV plus Cauldron, even if it's only temporary. Either way, we can contain things with Final Showdown or Fire Magic for 6 mana, can deal with everything in play. And then I keep up Helix versus Showdown. I guess we can also keep up mana. Yeah, let's go with Final Showdown, I guess. Destroy all creatures. Don't want to let them untap with all that mana. And then we still have Helix, so if they play creature, we can take it out before Cauldron grows it. Mako, I can also take out with the Fire Magic. So I can keep the Helix for later. Maybe if we just defeat the Cauldron, our opponent will give up. But I don't mind setting up Revelation first, so we can start attacking with the Monks. And yeah, our opponent has seen enough. So it took a while, but once we survived the early aggression with Ultima stabilizing us, we were able to take over. So yeah, this 4-color control deck can be a little bit sketchy in the early turns, since we have to deal with a bunch of tap lands and pain lands. We may not have every single color, and our removal is mostly 1-for-1, so if our opponent's off to a very quick start and we don't have one of our early sweepers, we can get run over. But once we get around turn 4, turn 5, and we haven't lost a game yet, we can comfortably start taking over with our value cards and additional card draw, and then we have access to pretty much all the answers we need to deal with the opponent's threats, and then the deck feels pretty great. So overall, still a decent deck, but could struggle in the best of 1 meta if you face a lot of mono-red aggro, for instance, which is still going to be a popular archetype, and especially if you're on the draw, you might just be too slow to catch back up. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.